What's up, everyone? Today's podcast is a heater, I think. However, it's a little different than some of my normal stuff. It is not tactical. It's more pensive and conceptual. As a result of it being pensive and conceptual, I noticed I pause a lot. The reason I pause is in the beginning when I started making podcasts, I would have filler, ahs, and there are a lot of times throughout this podcast where I want to make sure that I articulate something clearly to you so that you can understand it more easily. However, the pauses are so long sometimes that it may distract your ability to actually understand the concept. So I share this because you may find it useful to play this episode at 1.5 or even 2 times speed, and that might help you understand a little bit better. But we're going to talk about some really cool things: happiness, learning, exchange, and paying the price for the things that we want in life, and then lastly, relationships. And it's all about making improvement the goal as opposed to chasing some sort of outcome. The outcome is improving itself. That's something that has served me tremendously in my life, and I want to give back and share all of those things with you. So, hope you guys enjoy. Today's podcast is more something that's top of mind for me, and I want to talk about improvement as the goal itself. The more I'm around people who are doing really impressive things in business or who have done impressive things in business, the more I realize that their destination is not to get rich. Maybe it was at some point, but along the way, on the journey, they have realized that that cannot remain the destination. And for many, maybe it never was the original destination. Their destination is mission-driven, or in many cases, it's simply to improve. And as a result of driving towards a certain mission, or as a result of improving who they are as an individual, they make a shit ton of money. And the reason that this is top of mind for me right now is twofold. One, I get the opportunity once a week to help dozens of new real estate investors in the beginning of their career, many of them trying their hand at business for the first time. And I see so many of them get discouraged when the first bump in the road hits or when they hit several bumps in a row. And I find myself constantly emphasizing this point. And two, whether you are in or outside of business, if you can learn to genuinely find joy in the process of improving who you are personally, improving as a human being, then you've won. And the reason I emphasize this so much, and why you've probably heard me talk about it a lot on this podcast, is because I'm not sure there is anything else that has gotten me a higher return on my overall well-being. And what's interesting about that is it's not that my life has become easier. It's that I've found joy in the process of improving who I am, which actually has meant that I have taken on difficult things or difficult time periods in my life. And that has made me a better person, which has improved my overall well-being. So the purpose of today's podcast is going to be to drill this in your head, and not from I'm on a pedestal, you should listen to me. This is actually more me just yelling at myself, and I'm doing it because I'm utterly convicted that if you can make this shift, you will make a shit ton of money. Who am I? My name is Ryan Rice. I'm a full-time real estate investor. I spent almost 14 years working for a Fortune 30 company as a W-2 employee. I ventured out on my own about 4 years ago and have been running my own business since, and that's where I've been generating the majority of my income. And I share everything here with the hopes that it can make you a better business owner, a better person, a better human. There are 4 concepts that I want to talk about. And I think if you can understand these concepts really well, then you can move towards setting improvement as the goal. And the 4 concepts are happiness, learning, exchange, and relationships. The reason why I want to talk about happiness is because most people think that if they make more money, it will make them happy. If they have the bigger house, it will make them happy. If I could only find a job that wasn't super stressful, I will be happy. If I can get to $100,000 a year in income, I will be happy. $250,000 a year, I will be happy. And I think most people define happy as a state of pleasure or feeling content. And so therefore, people have the belief that if I make more money, I will feel pleasure or content. If I can get in the bigger house, I will feel pleasure or content. If I learn how to flip houses and I can make $50,000 a flip and I can do 5 to 10 of those a year, I will be content. The flaw in that thinking is it's a little bit of a cart before the horse. You want to make money. You want to learn to flip houses to make money. But in order to do those things, you have to learn this vast amount of skills. And in order to learn those skills, you are going to have to endure an incredible amount of difficulty. And when you endure the difficulty, you see that you are so far away from what you think will make you happy, which is making the money, that you decide at that moment that it's not worth it anymore and you give up. So the whole idea of pursuing something because you think it will make you happy actually does the reverse of what it is that you want, because you are focused on a certain outcome and you think that that outcome is what's going to make you happy. But then you realize when you're going after that outcome that it's really, really hard to achieve. And you look up and it looks like the distance between where you are now and the outcome that you want is so far that you decide that you don't want it anymore and you're not willing to make the trade. And what I have found really interesting about happiness is I attach my level of happiness not to any sort of outcome at all. I attach my happiness to simply, am I improving as an individual? Am I improving as a father, as a husband, as a businessman, as a member of my community, as a son, as a brother? And what's interesting about that is I'm not in pursuit of happiness. In fact, it's like in my mind, I'm like, I don't really care about happiness. I'm not optimizing for happiness. I'm not optimizing to be in a state of pleasure. And that's what's so fascinating about the idea of happiness is those who are optimizing to be in a state of pleasure, they realize that in order to get what they think will put them in that state of pleasure, they have to do hard things. And those hard things are not generating the pleasure that they want, and therefore they quit. And so what I have found more useful, and use it if you think it's more useful, or if you try it and you find it's helpful, stop trying to pursue a state of pleasure. And if all you're doing is trying to pursue being better at business, being better in your personal life, what I have found is that if my focus is just simply improving, then I find genuine joy in those things. And it's like if I'm not searching for happiness, then that's when I actually find it. And I wanted to share that as a concept because I think there are many people out there who are just, they have the right intent, but they're in pursuit of the wrong vehicle. They're in pursuit of the wrong idea of what they think will bring them that state of pleasure or that state of feeling content. And I think that's why there's so many studies out there. People, for example, who are born into large sums of money, you don't read about them being generally more happy than the average person. The reason why you don't read about people with significant sums of money on a larger or having a higher amount of happiness than the rest of us is because that's not the thing that brings us the pleasure or that makes us feel content. In me simply learning that I can find joy in becoming better than the person I was yesterday has been really relieving. And what's ironic about it too is when that is my sole focus and I work ruthlessly at it, I end up making more money and I get the things that I thought I was originally after in the first place. The second concept I want to talk about is learning. The more I learn, the more I realize that the amount of things that I don't know is larger than it was before. So it's this constant dichotomy of I have learned more and I feel smarter, yet now because I have learned more, I actually feel dumber because I realize that there are an even vaster amount of things that I need to learn than what I realized before. And the reason I think that that's important is because if you can learn to pursue knowledge, and I think there's two types of knowledge. There's declarative knowledge and procedural knowledge. Declarative knowledge meaning knowing that a concept or knowing that something exists, knowing about a thing. And then there's procedural knowledge, which is knowing how to do the thing. And the more I learn about both of those, declarative and procedural knowledge, I realize that there is just such a vast ocean out there of things that I have yet to learn. And the reason I think that's important is because if you do not find joy and improvement and learning, then that could be really difficult because as the smarter that you get, you're going to learn that you actually know nothing relative to what you do know. And if you don't find joy in that, that can be a little torturous. But in a weird way, it's almost sadistic for me. It's almost obsessive for me. The more I learn and the more I realize how much more there is to learn, the more I yearn to learn that much more. And so it's just this weird cycle. And that's why I think it's so important to derive joy just from improving itself. Because life is going to be a constant journey of improvement. And the more that you improve, the more you will realize that you need to improve in order to get to where you want to go. I think too, along that same concept of learning is along the way, you realize you're just not that good as you thought you were. And it's like the more that you learn, the more you realize that the people who are doing really impressive things, it's like they're not just twice or 3 times as good. They are 100 times as good. And maybe to define that better, they have 100 times the output. They can spend the same amount of time as you do on a thing, but they get 100 1,000 times the output that you do spending the same amount of time on that thing. That's what I mean by you realize you're not that good. And so I have this revelation about learning where the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know, because the people who are doing the most impressive things, man, they are above and beyond vastly 99% of people out there. And you don't realize how good they are until you start to learn more and more. The third concept I want to talk about is exchange. And what I mean by exchange is we want things in life, but we don't want to pay the price for them. That's how most people live their life. So it's like you go to the grocery store and you go to the meat section and there's a steak. And if you want the steak, there's a price tag on it. And you can either choose to pay the price and get the steak and walk home and cook it and eat it, or you can choose not to pay the price and then you don't get the steak. The problem is, I think most of us go through life wanting to be strong, wanting to be courageous, wanting to be smart, wanting to be rich, wanting to be financially free. But the thing is, in the supermarket or in the grocery store of life, if you go to the supermarket of life and you say, I want to be strong, there is going to be a price tag that you have to pay to have that trait. If you go to the supermarket of life and you say, I want to have courage, there is a price tag for that courage that you have to pay. And you either choose to pay it or you choose not to pay it. And then you can walk home from the supermarket of life with the trait or without the trait. You go to the supermarket of life and you say, I want to be rich. There is a price tag to be wealthy. And you either choose to pay the price or you walk out of life not wealthy. I want to emphasize this because every week there are people in my real estate community who sign up to flip houses. And they have a grand idea of a vision in their mind. There's a reason why they want to do it. And the first sign of difficulty, or maybe they hit several speed bumps in a row of difficulty, they give up. And they're met with this adversity. They walk up to the supermarket and there is an obstacle getting in their way of paying the price. And instead of doing what is required to have the ability to pay the price for the thing that they want, they just choose to leave the supermarket. They don't want it bad enough. And so you have to realize that in life, if there is something that you want, there is a price tag associated with it. And you have to learn to want to pay the price, or you have to learn that you want the experiences that come along with the ability to pay the price, as opposed to want the thing itself. I love this concept or this thought that I heard from Alex Hormozy. And I'll share with you kind of the idea of what he talks about. If in the game of life, you're talking to the creator, and you tell your creator and you say, Creator, I want to grow up and I want to be strong. Then the creator is going to say, no problem. That means I will give you lots of situations and lots of opportunities and lots of challenge in life so that you can learn to be strong. And then you could say, Creator, I want to have courage to slay all the dragons, all of life's dragons. And the Creator says, absolutely no problem. That means that I will send all of the monsters your way so that you can learn to slay those monsters and in the process build courage. And the person says, wow, well, those two things, that sounds really hard, or that doesn't sound like a good life. And the Creator says something to the effect of, whether or not you live a good life is dependent upon who you are in the end. And a good life is not an easy life. If who you want to be in the end is someone who is strong and who is courageous, then you have to have experiences in life that are going to help you develop those traits. And so you have to learn that it's not an easy life that you want, but a difficult life is the good life. And I love that because I think so many of us ask our quote Creator, whatever, and that's not from a religious standpoint, but if you're having a conversation with your Creator and you're saying all the things that you want, what you actually want is an easy life, but then you want all of the character traits and the outcomes that come along with a difficult life. And if you can learn to genuinely seek the difficult life, because you know that those experiences are what are actually going to transform you into the person and get the outcomes that you actually want. And if you find joy in this weird sadistic way in the challenges, in the difficulty, that's when you know that you've gotten to a cool place. The last and final and the fourth concept I want to talk about is relationships. And the reason I want to talk about this is because everyone knows about the Harvard study that was done where you become most like the 5 people that you surround yourself with, or your reference group has more impact on your success than anything else out there. And I think your reference group can be who you spend the most time with. I think your reference group can also be who you compare yourself to. And here's the thing about what I've learned about relationships. And I'll just give you an example. I went to dinner Friday night with someone who I would consider to be and to have accomplished some incredibly impressive things. And I'm not going to talk about the specifics to protect this individual's identity. But every time I have a conversation with this individual, I walk away and my mind is blown just learning what is capable of a human being. The experiences that he's been through, the lessons that he's learned, how he thinks and how he processes information, what experiences have been able to teach him about how all of society's expectations are complete bullshit. And what I've found is if you don't have dinners like that, if you don't have people in your life where you walk away from an interaction and you feel and you say to yourself, holy fuck, I am a wildly better human after that interaction. If you don't have those experiences, then you don't have relationships in your life that are actually going to serve you. So I would strongly encourage you to seek out those relationships where you leave an interaction and you are just floored with the conversation. So to be more specific, if you don't have people in your life where you walk away from an interaction and you get an incredible amount of declarative knowledge that you didn't have before, meaning you learn about things that you didn't know existed before, or you learn about thought processes or concepts that you didn't know existed before, or you learn how to do something that you didn't know how to do before. If you don't have those people in your life, then you don't have the relationships that you truly need or that will benefit you the most. And I think the person who is most important to give you those things is the person you choose to pick as your spouse. And I'm very grateful for mine. And I won't turn this into a spouse picking podcast, but I'll just revert back to the fact that if you cannot think of people like that in your life, where you walk away from an interaction with that feeling or saying to yourself something like that, then you need to go find them. How can you find them? Just put yourself out there. Figure out what it is that you want to do. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably are interested in real estate or business in some facet, and go immerse yourself in the real estate and the business community and figure out how you can add value, because the more you add value, the more you'll get access to those types of people. And so I'll close out. I wanted to review those 4 concepts because I think if you have a good understanding of those 4, you can make your actual pursuit about simply improving as opposed to some sort of outcome that you think is in the distance that you're trying to move towards. If the outcome is a better version of you and that is the only outcome that you're after, I found that to be so freeing, because then it doesn't matter how fast something happens. You can have the patience that you need to just continue working without seeing an outcome for such a long time. And I found that to be so beneficial. So maybe a little more philosophical than what you usually come for. I hope you guys got some value out of that. If you did, let me know. Let me know what you think about this style of podcast. If you hate it, I'll stop doing them. If you want more tactical real estate content, then, don't share this and reach out to me and tell me that you think this sucks. If you like this type of stuff, share it. And that's how I'll know that it's helpful for you. Put it on your Instagram. Send it to somebody. I'll do more of this type of stuff. You guys tell me what you want and I can deliver. But for those of you that made it to the end, I hope you did get some value, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.